Okay, I wanted to do a kind of a tutorial on how to configure DCS to work with um, toggle switches. Most commonly, people will see that, like, such as the toggle switches on the Thrustmaster Warthog throttle. So if you look here, basically what I mean by a toggle switch is it's a switch that you throw, and you can see it stays on as long as the switch is in the on position. Um, So this is different than a button press, like for example, I'll hit the China hat, and this is basically a button press. It's only transmitting an on state when you have the button pressed. So for DCS to work properly um, with the various switches, you have to do some configuration in most modules to make it. So basically, you have to add some logic to it so the game knows when the switch is off, it knows to switch a switch in the cockpit to a different position. Um, so if you'll bear with me, I'm on an ultra wide screen, but I'm only recording on in this one portion for 1080p. So I'm going to try and keep everything in the correct position for that. I recommend using JSGME for all your mods in DCS to easily turn them on and off, and so you can turn them off for updates and then turn them back on with no trouble. So for example, I have my switch mod right here, so we're going to disable that. So in my mods folder, this is the switch mod. So now we have to choose an aircraft to work with. Let's just start with the A-10. So the default Lua is usually what you're going after in the joystick folder. You can also do stuff in the keyboard folder. Like I've created keyboard commands for certain aircraft. Basically adding commands that they don't have yet usually, such as the Mirage and the Viggen. So that's another thing this tutorial can show you is how to add things that aren't there by default. Things that are clickable in the cockpit but aren't available to be mapped. So we're going to go to the default Lua, and I recommend using Notepad++. So we're going to have something like this. And let's just choose something. Well, I guess we can look at something I've already done. Let's see, that's the circuit board or the circuit breaker. All right. So this whole list here, these are commands I've created based off of these commands. So these, I use these for my panels in my cockpit because they use single state toggle switches just like the Warthog HOTAS throttle. So usually I create a space just so I can kind of visually separate them. And I usually title them. So these are the titles that show up in the game when you map. So I usually put Alt in front of it, so it keeps it in alphabetical order right near the top, and it lets me know that they're the alternate thing that I can map. So this is one example of how to do this. You'll notice these commands up here are shorter. They only have basically one element to it. These are toggle commands in the game. So basically each time you press a button in the game, it turns it on, and then you press it again and it turns it off. So there's no set state. So how this works in my cockpit is, so it says down equals I command APU generator power up. What down is referring to is the button being pressed down. In this case, it's our switch being left on. And then up, basically is you letting off the button, so the button comes up. In this case, turning our switch off. So in this case, it means on and off. So we basically recreate the same command here, and just change down to up. We make sure we keep the comma where they should be. If you miss any of this formatting stuff, basically you'll lose all the commands when you go to the GUI in the game. So you want to make sure you do that properly. Sometimes you'll totally miss something and you'll have to come back and just search and see what you messed with and try and figure out what you screwed up. So in this case, all that I had to do was repeat this down and then up. And then I added, of course, Alt here. If you have, never mind. So when I go in the game now and I press the switch down, it commands this. And when I let off the switch or turn the switch off, it commands this again. The problem is doing it this way. Let's say you start in an air start. The only way it's going to recognize where your switch is when you turn the switch on. So if you turn the switch on, it's going to turn that thing off in the cockpit. So that's not a good example because that wouldn't be on in the air, the APU generator. But let's say your battery power. This one here, I'm not sure if this actually works with this command, so let's just ignore that. But it's the same toggle action. So if you start up in the air, you load into the cockpit and your battery switch is on in your panel and you turn it off, the game doesn't recognize that yet because it hasn't been turned on yet for it to recognize. And when you turn it back on, it's going to switch the battery in the game off. So basically, you can end up with all your commands being reversed of what they should be. The one way to fix that is to move all the switches, pause the game, and then move all the switches back to where they should be and unpause. But at that point, you've probably shut your airplane down and it's a whole mess. So that's the easiest way to do it, but it's not the best way to do it. So I'm going to show you how we can fix this. So this is just taking commands that are available already in the default Lua. So what we're going to do is going to back out of this. We're going to go to our aircraft. We're going to the cockpit folder, scripts. We're going to scroll down, and we want this clickable data.lua. And then we can just search. Again, let's see, that's the circuit breaker. All right. Okay. So you can see we found the clickable data for that switch. And here it's calling it, it's under devices, elect interface, and the action is device commands button _6. So now this way, we can change this command here to this. And when we do that, this argument now becomes valid. So now instead, we're still telling it down equals that command and up equals that command, except now we have this other thing here that's telling us what value down and what value up is. So now value down is 1, value up is 0. We also need to add another part here. And I'm going to try and remember how to do that. So I'm probably going to switch to another cockpit here. Yeah, so we just need that there. Sorry, it's been a little while. So we need cockpit device ID equals. And I don't think it's very picky where this goes. Cockpit device ID equals, and in clickable data, we know it's devices.elec_interface. We add that there, and then we make sure to add our comma. I'm just going to kind of double check over this. I haven't actually changed these yet for the A10. I've done it for other aircraft. So now what this is saying is value down can only be 1 and value up can only be 0. So now our switches cannot be set backwards. So if you start in flight, you can turn your switch on to match where it is in the game cockpit, and now it's synced properly with the game. And then when you turn it back off, it'll turn off like it's supposed to. So we're going to give this a shot. I'm going to save this, and I'm going to go back to JSGME, enable my switch mod. Hopefully you guys can see this where the window is. So we have my alt battery power here. That was the one I changed. Need to remember which one. I believe it's this here. Okay. Now we can load in. And see what happens. I'll try and pan my view over so you can see the battery switch in the cockpit. Okay, let me reset my view. Okay, I'm going to lock my track IR there. So now we can see our battery switch here. See, I can click it in my pit and it turns on and off. And I can also click it there. Now I can click it in my pit again to the on position and you see it doesn't suddenly turn off because now it works properly. Now I will demonstrate how this works with other switches that I haven't fixed yet. So that these switches only have a toggle action. So right now, okay, my generator switches are off in my cockpit. I'm going to turn the right generator on in the game, and now I'm going to click my generator switch on in the cockpit. And you can see how it goes reverse of what I set it to. Now, like I said, there's a way to fix this. You can hit pause, switch it off, unpause, and now it's properly synced. But like I said, if you're in an air start, it's just a total nightmare to do that. So the way we set it up for the battery switch now is it cannot get out of sync. So the second part of this is going to be showing how to add a command to an aircraft that's not yet available. So the example I'm going to use, I'm going to do the VIG in here. Again, I'm going to turn my switch mod off. So we need to I want to map the master caution switch in the VIGIN to a button. It's currently, I believe, only mouse clickable. So we go to our VIGIN clickable data, and I just searched master until I found the master caution reset. So that's this guy here. So we need to add it to the VIGIN default Lua. And I'm just going to do it up here, just to make it easy in the autopilot section, since it's sort of in that area of the dash anyways. So I'm just going to copy an existing deal and paste it here. So you see some of these things have this combo and the key thing here. So this is basically giving it default keys to map to. I never use that, so I'll just delete that. And in this case, it's pressed instead of down. Pressed is kind of a different command with how it works. It's like a repeat button pressing, I believe. So if you hold your button down in the cockpit, the button is being pressed over and over again. If I recall, I don't really use that very much, so I'll just change it to down. And the command we want, master caution reset, is 3001. So we'll change this. So this is yet another style of command where it's just these numbers. They always start with a 3 and then a 3-digit code after that. So we have 3001, and then we need to correctly change our cockpit device ID. In this case, error panel. Just copy that, change that to error panel. Okay, make sure our commas are in there and everything. We didn't delete any of those. In this case, this one we grabbed, the value pressed was a negative number. Certain switches need that. This one I'm sure will not need that. So just change that to a 1 instead, and then value up is 0. This was seat adjustment, so we'll just change that to master caution reset. And we'll just change the category from navigation to, oh, I don't know, system? Or is it systems? I can't remember. Anyhow, so we'll just save that. And so now we've added a command that did not exist. We'll turn our switch mod back on. And in this case, in the cockpit, even though it's a button instead of a switch, if you did not have the... Oh, I see an error I left in there. We're going to have to change that. If you do not change the value, or if you do not have a 0 value for up, it will always stay pressed after you pressed your physical button. It will not unpress itself. So you can see the mistake I made. I left this pressed instead of changing it to down. So let's turn our mod off. Change this to down. So again, this is just one of the many errors you can make when you're setting this all up. So again, okay, I fixed that. Turn our switch mod back on. Try this again. So in this case, I think I'm just going to map it to one of my MFD buttons, since it's roughly in the same physical location as it would be in the VIGIN cockpit. Okay. So now I'm just going to, of course, I gotta wait for this stupid DCS zoom thing to go away. I wish they would fix that. God, I hate it. Okay. Okay, so this is, you can see I've already created this switch mapping here with the battery switch. And we have our master caution here. And again, so that's wailing away. Now we're going to, see, I put that under system, master caution reset. So you see this is the only thing in this category, so it's not anything used by anything else in this aircraft. I believe it's MFD1. Is it not going to let me map that? Oh, I see what I did. I was in the keyboard default Lua, not the joystick default Lua. So you can see when you do that, you cannot map any of your joystick devices. You can only map your keyboard device. So that's another potential problem. Um, for example, I believe the Mirage, when it first came out, it still might be this way. Some of the functions were available to be mapped as joystick buttons, but could not be mapped as a keyboard. So I had to go in and basically copy the commands from the joystick to the keyboard default Lua, so I could map it to keyboard. Okay, so also another problem that I wish ED would fix, it used to be grayed out for things that aren't mappable. So it would show all these joystick devices as grayed out, and so I would know that they couldn't be mapped, and I wouldn't be sitting here trying to click on them like an idiot because now I don't know if I can map to them or not. I don't know why they would do away with that. Anyways, let's just map this real quick, and so I can just quit bitching. Okay. So now I've created it's a keyboard command, not a joystick command, but you get the idea. Okay, so our master caution's going off, and I pressed the keyboard key I mapped it to, and it works properly, so that's cool. Let's try it again. And you can see when I went into the controls, it stopped recognizing the switch state. That is a common DCS problem. If you go in and edit the controls, it forgets where your switches are set, so it did not recognize where I had that set until I flipped it a couple times again. Again, so battery on, and I hit the keyboard command that I mapped, and it turns it off. So we know that works now. And to show you how to fix that, okay, so this is, you can see up here, this is the keyboard default Lua. We wanted that in the joystick default Lua. I forgot I had both of those open. So simple enough, copy, paste. So now it will be available to be mapped to a joystick command. Okay. So that's it for this part of the video. Next, I'm going to show a slightly different situation like is found in the Huey, which is kind of a unique problem that took me a little while to figure out. Okay, so next I'm going to go over this problem such as it existed in the Huey. Many of the default mappings in the Huey are up and down commands. So for example, this 3-position switch here for the basically your master arm switch in the Huey, it's only mappable by default as an up press and a down press. There was no position. There was no single position mappings for it to set it to where exactly where you wanted it to go. You could only scroll up or down basically. So as how to show this, let's go to armament system. So we can see, basically as you can see, it's all increase, decrease, gun switch up, gun switch down, armament up, armament down. Um, so this is a problem if you want to map it to a switch that's on and off. So to show you how it works when it's mapped, I believe, yeah, I want the armament off, safe to arm up and down. Okay, so I'm going to map this to my MFD button here. So there's a rocker on the MFD, so I'll just rocker up and down. So you can see it. Sorry about the zoom. So as I press the up on the MFD, it goes up, press down, it goes down. Now, this is a problem when you go to the default Lua because you're not going to have the proper commands in that to create a functioning switch mapping for it. So let's get out of here and I'll show you how I created the Huey mappings. So these are my Huey deals here. So first thing we needed to do was go to clickable data. Just search ARM and see what we find. So in clickable data, we have a device here. Device commands button 5 with a device ID of, I'm sorry, this is the countermeasure switch, which is also one you can do, but that wasn't my example. I've already created this one. Sorry about that. So let's find where we were looking for. Armament switch, armed, safe, off. Okay. So this is what we wanted. It's a devices, weapon sys, device command button 8. So to add that, we had to go to here. I probably should have kind of set this up before I started videoing. I'm not scrolling around like an idiot. Okay, so this is the command I created. So you can see device commands button 8. Cockpit device ID is the devices.weapon_sys. Value down is 1. Value up, in this case, is -1. Value 0 is the middle position of the cockpit switch. In this case, it's safe. I only care about off and armed, so that's how I decided to set it up. So with my switch on, it's value 1, which is armed. With the switch off, it's value -1, which is off. And I just named it alt armament, and that's all there was to it. So let's check here. I didn't have my switch mod on last time. So this is the command I created, and it's pretty simple. You just copy an existing command. You paste the device button ID from your clickable data that you were looking for. And you make sure the cockpit device ID is correct for that button. You rename it to what you want. In this case, I also have alt, rocket, and guns. This is for the switch to switch between rocket and miniguns. In this case, value down is 0, which is the middle position of the switch. And value up is -1, which is the lower position. So when the switch is off, it shoots miniguns. When the switch is on, it's value 0, which is selecting rockets. So every aircraft is a little bit different, depends on the switch. You just have to kind of experiment and figure out what you're looking at. So in that case, we'll go back and I'll show you how my actual toggle switches work in the cockpit. Okay, so these are already mapped, so it should just work properly. I believe this is the switch we want here. So you can see this is my rocker switch that I had mapped. It works fine. You know, if that's what you're into, if that's the kind of switches you have. And for some reason it's no longer mapped. I wonder if that's because I started the game without the... Now would you look at that, everything's unmapped. Bummer. So yeah, you kind of got to watch that. I started the game and was messing with the mappings with my switch mod off, and it basically deleted everything I had in here. So that's pretty cool. Anyways, let's fix that. Now you can see when I turn the switch on, it goes to armed. When I turn the switch off, it goes to off. And the way it's set up, it can't become a backward switch. So I just flipped it on in the game. Now I'll flip it on physically. It's still synced. It doesn't do any weird funky business of being switched around. I did the same thing with this switch up here, which is not currently mapped because of the problem I just told you about. Anyways, that's that. So I hope that helps you guys who are having kind of issues wanting to make sure your switches are synced up, adding things that aren't in the game. By default, it's once you learn how to do this, it really increases the flexibility of what you can do.